Yeah. Which one will be first is the question. My notes are over there. Bollocks. Bit more comfortable than usual. It's going to be one of those year in review things. My hobby, the stuff that I've done, some of the projects you won't have seen me make videos of. Sometimes the palaver of setting up lights and cables and getting a good shot on something, physically getting the cameras and equipment right in the place you need to put your hands and stuff is more trouble than it's worth. So sometimes I just want a hobby and have fun. And other times I'm excited about what I can do and what I can show you. Primarily this comfy sit down one is, this will be the chair I sit in and watch a film. And in the near future we might be watching Mr. Henry Cavill doing some 40k Warhams on the big screen, the little screen. You know, they've teased at both TV and film. So I suspect much like limited stories like Mandalorian style, hopefully Andor, please, that was amazing. That's certainly one of my highlights of 2022. I have watched a few other people's takes on that because I've been too fucking sick. I've been too sick to record anything myself, so I've been watching other people and you know, I think we're all of a similar idea, but there's a couple of things I don't think anybody else has touched on, at least that I've seen in the dozen that I've watched, is the big fascist thing. The Imperium of Man is a horrible fascist organisation, and I haven't heard anyone talk about that. Nervous I am, certainly, of having 40k, you know, this franchise. How do we deal with that? Henry Cavill seems like a decent bloke, but you know, he's an upper middle class, quite privileged chap. I hope he's aware of his privilege. I haven't seen any stuff where he explicitly talks about that, and I'm not trying to fucking cancel the dude, as if that's possible. But yeah, it does make me slightly nervous about how. And I'm hoping alien races, the Votan seem quite well placed to do that now, to go, what the fuck, you fascists? Or the Eldar go, what the fuck, you fascists? You xenophobes, you this, you that? I don't know, perhaps not the Eldar. The Orcs probably don't have an opinion on such things. But yeah, just a thought. Yeah. So I guess it's, you know, which one will be first is the question. What can project Warhammer 40k, this mad sprawling story? What's the easiest way of getting that story out to the great unwashed? And you know, Eisenhorn is the one that sprung to my mind. You know, I saw a photo. It's on my Instagram way back. There's Cavill sitting on a jet plane with his laptop in front of him, and Eisenhorn and another some kind of door kicking special forces dude memoir, I believe, as I recall. And that was, you know, around the time that we started hearing rumours of an Eisenhorn TV show being in production. So my kind of first best guess would be, you know, there's some legwork done on that, whether those rights can be bought and the work can be kept on, or whether those people continue on this project, because presumably Cavill had some conversations going on there. These things take years. My limited experience in film and TV is at the coalface making the bloody thing in the studio. It's certainly not in the pre-production side of things. A couple of times on occasion I've been involved in some of those conversations, but certainly I can't speak to it. But Eisenhorn, you know, it's a human scale story. But then there also is that thing of, Cavill kind of needs to be a Space Marine, and certainly there needs to be Space Marines front and centre. They are the poster boys of the faction. And I don't like using the word poster boy, but, because I think there should be female Space Marines, and maybe this is the time we see it. Maybe that's the one where we get these child soldiers being mutilated into Space Marines, psychologically and physically put through the mill. I think that would be something really interesting. And so there's Caiaphas Cain. I've never said that name out loud. Caiaphas Cain seems to be like a good story that could, with its slightly Blackadder goes forth, sort of tongue in cheek. We can laugh at the Empire, and that seems like a good way to, like good old Rogue Trader did back in the days. It was a parody. We're satirising the modern world. Rogue Trader 40k in 1989 came about in a world where we had the 2000 AD comic book, most famously Judge Dredd, this horrible, ultra-fascist judge, jury and executioner is the poster boy of their magazine, their comic. And Rogue Trader has many of the same artists throughout its pages, and certainly these guys are steeped. Rick Priestley and those guys in Games Workshop. You can see it in the artwork. You can see it in the stories they're telling, in that tongue-in-cheek, irreverent humour that was much more of in the forefront back in those days. But obviously, as a company grows and you get shareholders who are beholden to nothing but the great green dollar and profit, that a company has to be a bit more careful and has to shy away from that lest they offend. John Blanche as an artist is studying art history and so on, and will have been surrounded by that kind of academia, and then some of the other guys are straight up history nerds, and that wonderful churn that is the 40k galaxy. I don't think heresy will happen straight off the bat. It might be a second or third one to come along, but certainly something that once I think they've found their feet would be amazing to see. Where Cavill is in that. Once he's got a few more grey hairs, then he's a perfect Rogel Dawn, Emperor, Guilliman, or whatever. Or we live in a world where the dots on the faces and the digital manipulation, all of the Primarchs are supposed to look pretty similar. He could play them all, or get Eddie Murphy in to do it, with various frat suits. Just me then. But, I think the one we all want to see is the Muppets. Henry Cavill, the only human, and Animal as Angron, Gonzo as Gulliman, Beaker and Bunsen as Alpharius and Amagon. Yeah, it's perfect. Miss Piggy. Magnus, maybe? No, Russ. Got to be Russ. Miss Piggy as Russ. Yes. Space Pigs. Oh, it writes itself, doesn't it? If they don't do that, something criminal. What have I got? I certainly see it being an Aaron Dembski Bowden. Who wouldn't like to see the Night Lords trilogy done? That'd be bonkers good. Or Dan Abnett. I suspect those guys are the ones that are going to get their stuff turned into 40k on screen. And Dan Abnett has got some experience. Anyway, yeah, what else have we got? A few people have said Gaunt's Ghosts. That's got that kind of Band of Brothers feel. I certainly think something like that would be something that could televise. The 40k universe is so broad that, much like Star Wars has done so many different things, the animated stuff, sitcom vibes happening in Necromunda, how can that not work? Something super mundane. Who wouldn't love to see The Office? the administratum / office. Yeah, it's exciting times, I think. Hopefully some female space marines. That would be, if we're going to go out to a wider audience, I think that really will be the time that we get rid of that decade-old paragraph of old, bad, wrong biology. It's a forgivable mistake. There was, a handful of guys writing these stories. It wasn't their wheelhouse. Certainly I know that being brought up in the 70s, I have said and done some sexist things, even though I'll consider myself a feminist. I have said and done things I'm not proud of, and have been made aware, no, we don't say that anymore. No, you can't say that now. Just don't be a fucking dinosaur, move with the times. I played a gelatinous cube monk, like you do in a little D&D, who had transcended and become enlightened, cleaned up the floor in the dojo of a monastery, and over thousands of years had become enlightened. Backstory. There's always a backstory. But I had this idea because of this UV reactive resin that I'd picked up, that maybe I could put it in these silicon moulds that you can get from various crafting supplies. I think that's the one I actually used, but this is obviously the largest. I've done other things with the other ones. Over the months, over the year. Yeah, it's a year ago. So I put a little bit of ink in the UV resin, mixed it in, and turned that round with the torch pointed at it, and slowly built up sides, almost like one would with the resin 3D printers. But I did it with these, hence. So yeah, a bit of ink, bit of the resin exposed to UV, and then when it was fully exposed on sufficient number of sides, I could pop it out, pour the resin in, and then expose and get all 6 sides. So it's actually hollow. Don't know how obvious that was before, but it's actually hollow. The idea being that I would try and find some kind of gel or goop I could put in there and put a bone and a skull and a sword, or the classic bits that you see floating around in the guts of a cube. So that was the first one. And then of course I got fucking COVID a second time. Good old COVID. So I started painting Kagra's Ravagers that I did on one of my earliest videos, in fact. One of the first ones I was actually quite proud of, where I got the lighting right, and I had more kit, and I wasn't shooting on my phone, so I had a nice camera with a nice lens, and I was able to do more. And this is a learning process. So they're quite splashy because I'm full of snot, but I'm quite pleased with them, actually. Looking at them again, they look all right as plain pieces. I can do more to elevate them. They're not finished, but they're reasonable just as to play underpants, which really exploded at my club. As I was starting to feel better, I dug out the old Archaon. Is it Archaon? Archaon. He's got like a bloody dragon now that's 6 foot tall, with 3 heads and all the flavours. But this old model, he's on a horse, and I always loved the old Chaos Knights that would ride on zebra, leopard, tiger, stripe. So I had a go at that, and I got those super duper high focus lenses and tried them out to get some of the detail on some of the kind of nice hair texture. I was getting more into adding texture rather than trying to paint smooth, as I think that's something that suits my painterly style. Yeah, so there's a bit of that, and then of course the deep gits. the army that I started building as a all squig. You know, squigs look great as fish. I really chuffed with this. Again, one of those nice ideas that I had all those years ago and actually threw some time into. Then the world stopped and playing Age of Sigmar didn't really ever happen. But in the interim, Dungeon Bowl came out. I used the UV resin to make those gelatinous cubes, the bases on the teleporters that you come in on to give them a nice swirly little puddle there. Again, other video where I do the deep gits, where I do the official, where I show you some work on some of the big lads that I did to make the fish into a Blood Bowl team. I wanted to play them, use them in Dungeon Bowl. So I made a whole bunch of them, painted them up. Subsequently played them in a few games with Dan. Did I play Anthony? We talked about it, but I don't think we ever did. And Johnny came over, and we had a couple of games. Yeah, good times. Of course, you may know about Ben, 90% Geek. He's got a little channel where he talks a lot about his Old Hammer campaign. I didn't have any Old Hammer. I never played Warhammer back in the day. I got into the hobby and was all about Space Marines. Noise Marines was my big thing. I had some Harlequins and other stuff. But I never played the square basey stuff as much as I was aware of it and liked the models. Just didn't have the money to do that much hobby. Teenage kid, surprise, surprise. But he had the event on up at Warhammer World, and I hadn't seen all my mates, and the lockdowns were lifting, and so I scraped together a few pennies and went up and recorded with John, lovely John, who does his My Life in Miniatures podcast. Old school audio, none of this looking at people's faces stuff. And it was a really good time. Nice to see him. I've known John for a few years. He's a friend of a friend. We've gotten to be reasonably close. And he has got some great shows with some super talented people from across the hobby. Well worth a look. Again, link in the cat. So I went up there, took some photos of the fish up on some of the Warhammer boards, mooched around, rolled some dice, played some beer. Good times, yeah. Then I think we're into March. Is it March? March. Yeah, the weather got just about good enough in the spring, and itching to play more games now that potentially the world is opening up and things are happening. On the terrain that I've had squirreled away over the years, finished building it, got the rattle cans out, and you'll see here predominantly silver, all based in silver, and then loads of oil washes. The rest of it is big brushes, slapping on oil paint. It's a very black, brown, generic, somewhere between a Nuln oil and a Agrax Earthshade. Slosh that on. The beauty of oil paints is that they dry slow enough that you've got some working time. So I could slap on 3 or 4, then grab a sheet of newspaper and rub it off. It's absorbent enough. If I scrunch it up and then go back to some that aren't completely dry, I can then dab on some texture. Like you see people doing, adding texture to blue foam when they're making terrain. You can roll a bit of silver foil on it. Similarly, a big piece of newspaper has got larger texture and you can just get some variety and stuff there. Then when you're painting your flat colours on top of that, you'll get some of that showing through if it's sufficiently thin. So there you go, just lumps of rubble and all kinds of various bits of orc terrain that were in the Speed Freaks set and one of the other Necromunda ones as well, I believe. And of course it was nice out there, so the cat joined me. Here he is, doing a loaf. And they're quite nice. You can see there how the sunlight catches it, darker at the bottom, lighter at the top. The oils gather beautifully. Just, they look right because, this is a big oily machine. There's little micro tells that oils do that just tell you, and that little bit of your brain that's just seen oily machines that says that's right, that's right. Um, really pleased with the way they look on the 40k shipping containers. Right, what else happened in March? WARPSTORMER did their thing. I'm not wearing the t-shirt. I changed it. I was wearing it yesterday. One of my mates, he's a frontman for a metal band, WARPSTORMER. Surprise, surprise. What game do you think he plays? Yeah, he's got a load of orcs. He's got a load of Crimson Fists. Is the other one. He's really, really good painter. Really like his stuff. I reached out and said, "Oh, I love what you're doing. Could I use your music? That's what you've been listening to probably since May, June. I was able to put those tracks, intro, outro music, WARPSTORMER, Link in the Cat." Oh, of course. I did the tank ages back. Just had so much fun building it that the momentum carried me on, and I started painting it. I shortly after had to pack everything up and move house, and kind of moved on to other things in the interim. But I dug out the rest of the Scoopquisition, Scoopquisitorial. They're in one of the Eisenhorn books. It's a crossover with the Scooby Gang and Eisenhorn, and yeah, I just funny little mash-up, part of the Silent War thing that, again, Ben that does the old Hammer one I was talking about earlier, he for years, 6 years, pandemic aside, has run Silent War. Did one later on in this, earlier on in the year, up at Warhammer World. But yeah, this kind of in joke of having, an Indiana Jones proxy, or I did an 18 one with the 18 van. Have a look in my Instagram. Again, Link in the Cat. To that, where I turned Achilles Ridge Runner into the 18 van and did 4 A-Team inspired human models as my warband, which is not nearly enough for a warband, and everybody kicked my teeth in because I had 4, they could just focus on 4 characters and I got shot to bits. So I did the same mistake again and made 5 models this time. Yeah. I didn't play in Silent War this year. Not being into 40k, it's a bloody mess. The rules bloat is just crazy. Give it a rest. Calm down. Stop it. Could talk about that for ages, but let's not for here. Then another one that I dug out that I'd not that I built ages ago, and I just put some base colours on, was my big Centaur kitty that it was just a bit of fun. One of those ones that didn't have particularly a purpose. I believe you can use it in Warcry. I think that's where the quadruped part of that model is from. The Sisyphrinxy meerkat banana thing. And then the various other bits that I couldn't even tell you because I'm not that plugged into Age of Sigmar to know what all these bits are. But I liked them, so I nicked them. Little bits off of eBay and whatnot. And just had really good fun with that kind of sky earth reflection on the shield and on the armor panels, trying to get more contrast. I still want to push the contrast more on this one, but it's nearly there. As I think I've said a couple of times, it's always nice to have a project that's got lots of textures and lots of smooth surfaces. If you're bored of painting your Horus Heresy Space Marines, you're bored of doing chipping on tanks and armour and whatnot, do something that's very different, got more organic textures. It will just kind of change you up, and you'll be surprised at what you've learnt doing one thing then applies to another. And then I built my orc. Again, one of those things, I hadn't built anything in a while. Found this torso, had found the arms off of one of the orc buggies. He's lobbing the Molotov cocktail out the window. A few other orky bits, Blood Bowl orc shoulder pad. And it was just nice to breathe modern parts onto that old torso. And it's funny how they all fit together, and really pleased with that. Looks really nice, really dynamic. And you'll see a few months later, few months later, he gets painted. Again, another one of these projects where I built it and it got mothballed. I got sidetracked. It's almost like I had undiagnosed ADHD and was all over the shop. I built my Invader ATV a bit wrong and made a Space Marine go-kart on the Rainbow Road, of course, because that was always a leery track to play. And why not really beat yourself up and try and do object source lighting from a glowing road in fucking 7 colours? What a twat. That was an awful lot of fun, but it will melt your brain. But you know, it's one of those things. Push yourself. Try something you've never done before. If you fuck it up, you can paint over it, or scrub it off, or cover it in battle damage, or let the cat chew it, or something. He's eating a bloody diorama. That fucking. Yeah, what else did I do? Did a little bit of drawing. I got the pencils and paper out. I was drawing up some tattoos for somebody, and I wandered off and started drawing some Alpha Legionnaires in a fruity style. My mate Dan, he builds a lovely Titan. He does really dynamic Titans. And my mate Toby, they were really getting into Titanicus. And it's like, oh, okay. I had a demo game of it many moons ago when it first came out, and I did a commission build for a friend of mine, who didn't have the time to build them up. He just wanted to paint them. Yeah, I built them up for him and had lots of fun. And I was like, well, okay, drop a couple of quid on them, and yeah, I built them up, painted them a little while later because, of course, the news of Heresy 2 came along, and I then spent bloody ages digging out all my old Forge World resin, stuff that I hadn't built back in first edition Horus Heresy. It was really hot, everybody was playing it, and because it was the same as the then 40k system, it wasn't too much mental overload to play these two kind of different games. And getting back into it now, I've only played 3 or 4 games, but because I've played so much of that 7th edition that it's based on, I kind of knew where I was going with it, and it felt like playing a game you hadn't played in ages. Like, I haven't played chess in ages, but I could probably play it. You know what I mean? So yeah, these are my Alpha Legion, and they are Phobos legs, because I had a whole Space Marine Phobos army, and I chopped them off and put Heresy era stuff to dress them in. Because in the fluff, Alpha Legionnaires are slightly taller than most, and Alpharius and Omegon are slightly smaller than the other Primarchs. So it actually works out. They don't look any bigger, particularly, than the new Heresy Mark 6s. Six. But yeah, I had loads of fun making these tactical looking Alpha Legionnaires. Absolutely churning them out. Because, I mean, that's what I got into the hobby doing. That's what got me back into the hobby, doing Space Marines. They speak to me. They're a really cool and iconic bit of the hobby. Of course, what that meant was we got a plastic contemptor, and as you well know, I have to make a contemptor dynamic. So, yeah, go look at that video. I'll put that in the end cards. Make your contemptors look dynamic. They are little action figures. They are brilliant. They are so poseable. They can do everything. please don't make your Contemptor Dreadnought stand there like that, looking like he's been banged on the head with something, or a conversion beamer's just got whistled past his ear and fried his circuits. So many people standing there like that. Action figure. Get an action figure, nick it off your kid, nick it off your little brother, pose it and practice. Look at images of people running and doing dynamic things. You know, I've put big swords in mine because I go turn it up to 11. But have loads of fun. Make these guys look cool. Look at your other Space Marines and look how they're standing. Look at these dynamic poses that these characters are stood in, and try and mimic that with your Contemptor. Glue together the simple bits, and then use blue tack. It's all in the video. Go and have a look. Yeah, absolutely loads of them. Had loads of fun going through my bits box. And then I switched on to painting because I fancied doing a bit of painting. I'm building and painting and building and painting, keeping my hobby fresh. Hopping backwards and forwards like a butterfly. And I painted up my Titans. And of course, dazzle camouflage. It's really interesting stuff. There was this little window in technology where people were targeting torpedoes from one ship to another in the turn of the century, early First World War, where you had to aim torpedoes through binoculars or periscopes, and you had to try and figure out the speed and direction. So if you have these patterns that trick you and play an optical illusion, you can't tell whether that ship is moving towards or away because of the pattern. You can't tell how big it is, what class of ship it is, so on and so forth. So it kind of appealed to me that some weird anachronistic Mechanicum STL would use that on Titans. It seemed like a weird thing that would happen in 40k. And then of course you can name them all off of weird battleship names, or I love Accession, the Ian M. Banks book. I reread that recently, and all those weird ship names. So I'll get the little nameplates that you can get 3D printed on the front of the Titans that really help with the direction as well. Who does them? Tell me who does good nameplates for Titans. Pop that in the cat. What else should we do? Blah blah blah. Titans, Jumping Dread. Oh yeah, and then my other German mate. He is the guy that made, I don't think he invented it, but he certainly made it super popular, the Alpha Legion crackling stealth mode way of painting. He did his own codex, which just exploded, and it was 40k rules for some special units and stuff. And one of the special units was these assassins. Bollocks. So he did this Photoshop kit bash of this particular model, and I went, "Oh, I reckon I can make that." So I got the parts and I made it, and I sent it to him. And bless him, he did an amazing job on it and tagged me on it, and it's got like 1,000,000 likes on Instagram. It is the most liked thing whatever I have ever been involved with, I think. That kind of came about because he, of course, knows Josh, that painted the one leaping over an old Orc wagon wheel. I gave that to Josh. He painted it. That got sold to raise money for Ukraine against the Russian bastards. Not all Russians, just Putin and the kleptocrats and oligarchs at the top. What a time, eh? What an interesting time to be alive. I might pause this so it's not one massive take. Right, what else happened? Oh, yeah, I pulled the trigger on another bust. Again, it's that thing of working on surfaces at different scales. Busts tend to have lots of different textures and things going on. Hair, armour, different materials enable you to learn different things. Working at a different scale is also very interesting. You can put more detail into an area. You can get more contrast because you've got more surface to expand across. It's it's just fun. It's good. I really enjoyed painting this. And then a painting fell off the wall one day and smashed it to bits. Got a big dent in her hair, which is going to be a pickle. You can see it there to fix. But, you know, I've got some nice pictures of it. And I'll see if I can't fix it up at some point, I wonder. Yeah. The picture that fell off of it, I'll come to in a minute. But this is all my Alpha Legion, what I did build and was talking about earlier. And you can see the underpainting, the kind of grey primer, and then painting in and nadir shadows, and then going up with some white inks just to give you more contrast. I think that's very nearly all of the army. I think I've built some other bits since. But I look at this little fella. I don't know how many decades I've had him. And he became my test model. Then on the hottest day of the year, I got on a train and cut my sleeves off because I was melting, and went up to, does the sign say? Ipswich. And it was absolutely gorgeous sitting on an air-conditioned train, and then got out and fried on the pavements of Ipswich, walked around to the hobby shop that Mike Brooks had gone to as a kid. He grew up in the area, and he was doing a talk to a dozen or so people talking about his writing career. And I super enjoyed Alpharius. I'd just been reading that, one of the Games Workshop, Black Library, Primark novels. Absolutely sublime, really good use of modern pronouns and attitudes towards people and gender, and even in a fascist 40k Imperium of Man, the Alpha Legion actually sound quite reasonable ish. Their meritocracy and their flexibility seemed admirable. Anyway, it was a super fun book. I can't recommend it enough. Yeah, so I met him and got him to sign the artwork that arrived just in time. It's the cover artwork from the book. So that's signed. And that, coincidentally, is the piece of artwork that for some reason fell off the wall and smashed the pink lady on the head. Yeah. Then the heat wave. And this front room I'm sitting in has got a big old bay window. So it turned this front room into a greenhouse. And I would come in through that door and get hit by a wave of heat, like opening the oven. This room just wasn't, just couldn't. I just couldn't. I got my resin models off the shelves and put them in another cooler room, and just abandoned it for that month. Pretty much went out in the back garden. But I wanted to get a video out, and I had the idea to paint this for the cat so that he could never ever set foot in it. I had to put biscuits in it to get him to actually use it. But it was partly to get into the swing of the process I've developed, and to kind of see where it was in my head still, the way I was going to trait my Horus Heresy army. I don't use all the techniques because I didn't really want to slather this thing in oils, but it's a good tutorial, and it's a nice, again, mucking around with scales. It's nice to do something small, do something big, do something small, do something big. I do a bit of scenic painting, so I'll paint real brickwork and stuff that is plastic, vacuum form, but you know, it's in the scene of a film, and they can't build a real brick wall there. So what you do is you build a plastic one that you stand up. It's on a wooden board with plastic bricks on the front, and you paint it up. You put sand in the paint for the grout, and it's got loads of texture. Or I've painted a full-size Space Hulk for... it wasn't a Space Hulk, but in my mind it was a Space Hulk for one of these live-action experience things. Which... God, what was the last one I did? I did Ghostbusters for Secret Cinema, which was mad because Arbiter Ian was shooting some of the video. So it was like, I turned to him and he's like, this is weird, isn't it? We've played Toy Soldiers together many a time, well, a handful of times, and but to have him there literally standing with a camera on his shoulder, panning around going, can you give us a bit more height on that, please, Monk? And I'm like, yeah, mate. That just happened. Anyway, sidetrack. What else are we doing? Building more Alpha Legion, building more stuff. I dug out an old White Dwarf. I love the plastic card Whirlwind, the box top one. I didn't really have the cash to buy the Scorpius again in resin. Beautiful model, which of course they've now brought out in plastic, and I might scrape together my Christmas money if I've been good, Santa, and I might get one. But I don't need more than one. I've got this one. I quite like it. It's characterful. So I built the Whirlwind from the pages of, again, video, linky. What else did we do? Oh, I got a commission. An old friend of mine, he reached out. Could you paint this for my brother? And I did the zombie dragon. Super fun to get that model off the ground, where it's kind of looks like it's crawling along and looks quite rat-like. But to get it up and on a building gives it so much more presence and purpose. Putting more terrain into builds, making things look more dynamic, and making that beautiful model look even more beautiful, I think, I hope. And then I only had time for a day and a bit to paint it, and I think I spent a little bit more time than that because I built it quite quickly. I had 2 days, a build and a paint. I built it quicker than I thought. Just went together nicely. Quite sophisticated, even though it's quite an old kit. And so I was able to spend a bit more than 1 day painting it. A day in total. I did it over 2 days so that things can dry out. Yeah, so super happy with that one. Again, another one that I shot. So what else? Oh yeah, there was the Graviton one. That was quite fun. That was off of the Leviathan. I built the Leviathan a bit wrong. I don't know. It's, came out weird. But what it did mean was that I then of course had the cannon to slap on a Predator, because I quite like the idea of it felt quite Alpha Legion to be able to shoot a pocket of unreality and have this gravity puddle rippling away on the board, and it creates difficult or dangerous terrain on the board, and it stays there, so you can kind of almost block off or slow down units. It felt quite weird and tactical to be able to do that, even if it is a suboptimal weapon. It just felt like something the Alpha Legion might lean into. One of the other things that obviously I was quite excited about in 2022 was the squats came back. The clock fell off the wall and they came back. Yeah, the Votan. I grabbed the Codex. Mort and I sat and had a little read of that. Got a handful of the toys. But obviously, if you've seen my Chaos Squat video, up there, I fully kit bashed and ran an Orc Count Saz army. I used the Orc Codex, but modelled them as Chaos Squats. But now, of course, I've got all these toys that I want to re-kit bash and make the right size and shape and volume and the right target size so that I can play them as Votan. That's, of course, if they fix 40k. Otherwise, I'll probably just play Xenos Rampant or one-page rules or another game that doesn't have the over complex thing that 40k seems to just love to do. Of course, the other Votan squat thing that I had to do was this OG bit of artwork that, I've adored for 30 fucking years or more. I just had to build the Trike. Took a little while, life got in the way a bit. The collection of the parts and, being short of a few shekels, it took me a little while to get everything together. The inspiration was there, but as soon as I had the chance, I leapt on the Trike. If you're going to do a Trike for squats, Votan, you do it like that. fucker. And I might paint this up for Warhammer Fest in April, May. Perhaps entering Golden Demon. No chance of winning anything, but interesting project. Deliberately paint something to the absolute limit of my ability and the time that I have running up to it. I was just mentally exhausted and didn't have the headspace to set up cameras and lights, and I think it would have been a very tricky one to film because it's all such small parts. Yeah, and then of course the other one, Snarling Badger Games, who is Uncle Atom of Mini Something or Other YouTube. Lovely man, great to listen to, wise old head. And Vince Venturella, that's their gaming company. They released Space Station Zero, which is a lovely little game. It's got it's run on D12 system. So you roll a pool. If you've got a stat which is a 4 or a 5, you roll a pool of 4 dice. You're looking for odds or evens. Evens are successes. Odds are fails. But then on some tests, you're looking for a number over a level. So you've got that kind of 2 systems built into one set of dice. So I dug out some D12s, bought a couple of extra ones, same colours as the book, flicked through the PDF that came free with the book when you bought the book. The book was in the post and got here, by which time I'd read a bit and had half an idea. So it's nice to have a book, I feel, next to you to flick through and check things. I can always navigate quicker in a book than I can on a PDF. I don't know. Had a little game of that with Johnny. We played a couple of... we played the intro mission and one of the others. And had really good fun. We're looking forward to... We didn't quite do it the other week. Just decided to drink mulled wine and mulled cider and chat shit and play records for a few hours instead of rolling dice. But yeah, definitely looking to play more of that. Really fun little game that, by the way, is collaborative. So Johnny and I were playing against the AI. The bad guys are the robots and the environment that is this space station. So you're kind of dungeon crawling with a friend. Your space station crawling with a friend through this thing in a kind of choose your own adventure kind of scenario. As you complete that mission, you choose one of 2, 3 doors at the end of that, and you can go off. So you can play it many times. You can play it with many people. You can play it with many different of your own gangs, warbands, crews. The crews are based on the character, much the same way that Frostgrave had different schools of wizardry. Your different classes of ship, whether it be military, traders, smugglers, pirates, and so on and so forth, a medical ship, scientific vessel, can lean you towards different science fiction tropes. It's miniatures agnostic, so Johnny was using their Caradon Overlords that they'd painted recently, and I used my Palanite Enforcers with skull heads and spaceship collars, just like space zombies. Yeah, good fun. Can't recommend it enough, as you may have guessed. I've been waffling about it. What else did I do? Painted up the Purity seal that Alfield Windrunner 3D printed and sent me many moons ago. It was just looking a bit tatty. I think I put a coffee down on it once too many and flicked paint and shit on it. So I wanted to give it a bit of a zhuzh. One of the other things was waiting on the Votan Codex to drop. Very excited about that as a little space dwarf myself. I drew this kind of bit of artwork inspired on old Norse mythology, pagan artwork that I'd seen, and yeah, the abyssal hammer, these chaos loonies fighting chaos beasts at the edge of space and sanity. Did that. That was fun. What should I do with that? Built myself a Xiphon. Converted. Oh, it's completely different. Built that to look a little bit more clean cut and imperial. I love the model, just haven't got the money to be splurging on loads of resin again. I've got enough. They've got enough of my money over the years, and that's several kits there. That probably costs as much all told. But yeah, I wish I'd built the wings to be magnetised and come off because it's so big I can't transport it easily. It kind of pokes out of all the cardboard boxes that I've got. You knocked my light over. But I took that up to Warhammer World. There's me with my WARPSTORMER t-shirt in front of the Crimson Fists. And played Mikhail. There's his shit-eating grin. And there's me crying. Got the same hoodie on. Same hoodie on. Hello, mate. You alright? Yeah, that's me crying into my phone and scooping my toys up because Michael blew me to bits with his Mechanicum. Beady, beady, beady. Fuck off. And all the lads in the background there are the Silent War guys. Like I say, I'm just not doing 40k at the minute. It's a fucking mess. It's just so deep and long, and I don't want to do a GCSE in 40k just to be able to play a game. I don't even know where I would start. What books, what missions, what pack, what GT. Oh, I want to play and have fun. Yeah, overload. That was good fun seeing everybody nerding out, chatting shit and having a beer afterwards. Didn't take many photos because it was a bit of a razz up the motorway in Michael's little electric car. Play some games, go out, chat shit, have a lovely curry in Nottingham, go around the museum, of course. I did take some pictures of Louise Sugden's stuff because it always blows me away how beautiful it is, how smooth it is, how bloody bright it is. That young lady can do pop like nobody else. I don't know it. Like, I hope this shows how bright it is, but it's even brighter than it is. Like, turn your light up and your contrast, and pew pew pew. It's a trip. It's a trip. She puts psychedelics in the paint more. I'm sure it's just bonkers how bright and cool it is. And then what else did I do? I love Atomic Robo. It's this really mad adventure science comic book that it's on Red 5 Comics. It's one of those ones I went into a comic book shop in Camden where I didn't knock my light off. Comic book shop in Camden and just came across this. The artwork appealed to me. I flicked into the middle, read a page or two, was laughing, went, great, I'll have two of them. And have subsequently bought everything I can find of it. Really great story. And one of the arch villains is Dr. Dinosaur, who time travels with crystals. And a lot of the hilarity is him and Atomic Robo arguing whilst in firefights and throwing grenades and shit at each other about the impossibility of time travel. And Dr. Dinosaur insulting because he can't understand it because he's not as sophisticated as this talking dinosaur with a cooler pack on his back, presumably full of either snacks or crystals. Get any of that? That makes sense. Yeah, Dr. Dinosaur. And there's vampires in that one, from the vampire dimension. Yeah. Um, yeah, dinosaurs. Oh, and then I built a little goblin. He's a little goblin. Painted him up. Painted him with a brush and paint. And then there's that orc what I did months earlier. I dug him out as well. I've been painting lots of heresy stuff. Wanted to change the pace. And I wanted to paint loads and loads and loads more rivets because, I hadn't painted enough of them on the shoulder pads of Space Marines. So, like a fucking idiot, I did it on him as well. Yeah. What else? There must be something else. Gobbo. Painted the Sicaran, the one with the plasma. Of course, the Sicaran's got different turrets. And if you want to run those in Horus Heresy, you've got to buy the new tank. You buy the tank and the turrets from Forge World. You can't buy separate turrets. And again, not flush, not worked enough over the last couple of years because I keep getting sick. And nobody's got any money. Well, I say nobody. The top 1% have got it all. And we have to guillotine it out of them. And then, you know, isn't it weird how everybody's on strike? Like, everybody. Like, they're fucking screwing everybody. And yet the coppers are too stupid to see whose side they're on. You a copper? Can't like this. That's Karen. Oh yeah, and then pretty much, as you've probably heard, I sound like shit. I've been ill for most of December. And I've been ill for like 3 weeks now. So I'm just going to shoot this. It's not lazy, it's lots of hard work. I'm going to edit all this together. And while I was sick on the sofa, I was doing some artwork for Cult of Paint. Because I don't know if you know this, but I did the Cult of Paint artwork. But I've been talking to Henry about doing some more artwork for them. Watch that space, their space. You know who they are. Cult of Paint. They teach it. They've got a signature. They've got a signature series, Harder and Steenbeck airbrush. You might have seen me using it. I backed that Kickstarter way back when. Lovely machine. And Cat's not come and joined me. He's sleeping on my bed. That would have been nice. I would have shaved my head again for that, I guess, and gone full Bond villain. Hacked at my face, perhaps. No, it's not tempt fate, eh? I think I'm done waffling, eh? Did you have a favourite video of mine from the year? Did you see me do anything and you tried it? Did you just hate everything that I do and my face? And, you know, just comment. Say, do more of this, do less of that. I'm intrigued. Often people say lots of good stuff, but constructive criticism is always welcome. I hope 2022 didn't shit in your pants like it did mine. I hope your 2022 has been okay, because I think that's about the best we can ask for these days. And that 2023 goes off with a bang, or a chop. Fucking chop. Dear Santa, I've been good. Can I have fully automated luxury communism, please? We have the technology, we have the will. Let's just smash it out, shall we? Let's, as Bill Hicks said, explore space, both inner and outer, forever. I think I might paraphrase that, but, you know, that's the gist of it. That's falling off again.